Okay, great. Welcome everybody to the March Brooklyn SWAB meeting. We're very excited to see you. We're gonna, I guess, put your name and the reason you're here in the chat, if you would please. And we can go around the room and introduce ourselves. Would you like to start?
Start.
Oh, I'm Rhonda. I'm chair of the Brooklyn SWAB, and
I'm Nora, and I show up every 6 months or so.
okay, nice to have you.
I'm Beth. I'm vice chair of the Brooklyn SWAB. My pronouns are she, her.
I'm Lacey Talbert. I'm the legislative director here at Borough Hall, and unfortunately, I cannot find another microphone.
Thank you. Did you get one?
Michael DeBenny, friend of SWAB.
Oliver Wright, Brooklyn SWAB member.
I'm Sherry Rickle. I'm chair of the outreach committee. SWAB.
Pablo Garcia, academic research.
I can't hear. Who said that?
I think you just have to speak loudly.
Oh, yeah, it's there.
Picking up from the computer.
Yeah. So it's Pablo Garcia.
Yes,
He does academic research. Anything else?
organic, some work on the organics committee and the legislative committee.
Thank you. So welcome, everybody. We are very excited to welcome our guest this evening, Domingo Morales. He's probably, everybody knows him, but just in case you don't, he is from New York City. He started an organization called Compost Power after he was the inaugural winner of the David Prize. And he also, before that, worked for Green City Force. And he is going to talk about himself a little bit, and I think in his talk. And we're excited to hear sort of an update from about what Domingo does, and also an update because today he manages and built out 9 community composting sites. So let's just give it up for Domingo.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. Rhonda, thank you for inviting me. We had a nice event at the cafeteria culture, teaching some little kids. So that was exciting. But for anyone who doesn't know me, I am a New York City native. I grew up in New York City. I mostly in public housing. So most of my childhood, I grew up living in public housing, and growing up in New York City, I had no clue what sustainability was, because New York City Public Housing Authority really never had sustainability infrastructure. We didn't have means to recycle. We didn't have any compost programs. So when I learned about it through Green City Force, an AmeriCorps program that serves public housing, and I met David Buckle at the Red Hook compost site, my world was just turned upside down. And I'm like, wait, this is happening? Like, people are recycling their food scraps and turning it into finished compost to grow more food. We can actually recycle certain things and put the infrastructure in the community. But on top of that, I was germaphobe, and I used to be afraid of the FBI, fungus, bacteria, and insects. And it was through learning about composting, exploring the world of healthy organisms, that I got over my germophobia and actually started to embrace germs and started to fall in love with germs, especially the ones that make our soil healthy, the ones that cover our skin, our mouths, our hands, our microbiome that keeps us safe and keeps us alive. And it completely changed my view on germs completely. But on top of that, I love the idea of taking something that people think is waste, like food scraps, and turning it into a resource for communities. So I spent 5 years working with the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, with the New York City Compost Project, just honing my skills, learning how to manage volunteers, and just mastering the art of urban composting and composting in communities that are very dense. So, fast forward, after spending 5 years working at the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, the pandemic hit New York City. It hit the world, and New York City defunded its composting operation for a few months. But what that meant was the Reha compost site that I managed, which was the largest site in the United States that didn't use any fossil fuels, was defunded, and I was laid off. And 5 years of work almost went into the gutter because I was thinking about just giving up on composting, starting a new career. But I thought instead of giving up, I should create something that's more grassroots, something that is more resilient than a New York City compost project, where I'm not gonna run and fight for funding every time we have a mayor that has a hard time creating a budget that works. So I created Compost Power, and Compost Power's mission, I'm gonna try and share my screen now, if possible. Share screen. Share. Can everyone see my screen or no? Yes? You guys hear me? Please. No? You can't see my
Yes.
screen?
No.
I can see it.
One sec. Okay, cool. How does that look?
Your speaker
Shaky.
notes are covering up your slides.
Okay, give me one sec. Exit. Try and stop share. I'm gonna try this one more time.
Oh, yeah.
Bear with me.
I don't know
Share
if you pressed
screen.
optimize for sound. Oh, yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great.
All right, cool. Let me just make sure I can. This is the waiting room. Oh, I admitted someone in. That's my thing now too. All right, awesome. So Compost Power's mission is to build out sustainable community compost sites across New York City with an emphasis on underserved and marginalized communities. And what I mean by that is the New York City Housing Authority in New York City is 1 in 15 New Yorkers lives in New York City public housing. And the New York City Compost Project never actually served the New York City Housing Authority, and public housing didn't get the same resources that I got through the AmeriCorps program, through learning at the Red Hook Farm. And in order for NYCHA residents to get this service, they had to go all the way to Red Hook to come learn from me. By partnering with Green City Force, I was able to teach the young adults that came into the program after me, and that's sort of how they got the exposure to composting and how beautiful composting is. So I decided, instead of them having to come to a compost site that's dependent on New York City funds, government funding, why don't we build it in the community? Why don't we build a grassroots support approach where I bring composting to the public housing community? And that's where Compost Power was born. We're laser focused on making compost cool by proving that urban compost sites reduce rodent pressures, eliminates foul odors, and it's actually beautiful, and you can do this by hand. So Compost Power has built upwards of, say, 25 compost sites in New York City, community gardens, home composting, farms, but we only manage 9 of them. 8 of them are on public housing campuses. One of them is in Williamsburg, and that is a private site that we use to train all of our staff. And most of our staff are Green City Force graduates. So this slide just makes that statement. 30% of New York City trash is compostable. And as we know with the waste audits in New York City, that number is actually going up. It's more like 39%. So it's a commodity that we're throwing away when we could actually be creating a resource. Here are the maps of our compost sites. I think the last time I came to a Brooklyn SWAB meeting, I had maybe 3 composting sites that I was managing. We have 9 sites, Staten Island as well, all 5 boroughs. We're in all 5 boroughs now, which is exciting. And Staten Island is the hardest site to staff because it's just hard to find Staten Islanders that, are willing to do this kind of work. But we're doing okay with finding the staff to manage and process all of the food waste from the residents. We process using passive aeration systems, so we don't have anything fancy like an ASP system like you would find at the Reha compost site. or one of the New York City Compost Project sites. Our sites are passively aerated, which means we have to build them correctly so that they can breathe for about a week, so the humans can come back and actually aerate that material again. What that means in an urban environment is you're either going to use windrows, like you see on the right, or you're going to use wooden 3-bin systems. So Compost Power on the public housing campuses, we have a combined system where we start the material in the 3-bin system, that wooden 3-bin system that's rat proof. And then after a few weeks of being turned, aerated, and broken down, we then take the material out and put them into big windrows, like you see on the right. And this is our way of taking residential organics and turning it into finished compost. It's the easiest way I've found to do it in a small space. And we're actually able to process meat, dairy, and bone in these small systems. And I'll talk a little bit about that a little later on, but it's something that at the Red Hook Compost site, we used to tell people that you can't process meat, dairy, bone in a small scale urban composting system because it attracts more rodents. It has horrible odors that may come out of it because of the dense protein in the meat and the dairy. But what I found is if you start small, we started out with like cheese from the food pantry that went bad. And we started putting the cheese in, and little by little, we started adding more cheese. And then the goal for me was to actually increase the amount of enzymes that are needed to break down the protein in meat scraps. So that's why I started using cheese at first. I'm like, we got to start somewhere. Cheese can be crumbled up, so it's not gonna have that structural integrity of a piece of flesh. And after about, I would say 3 months of breaking down only cheese in our compost piles, we started to increase the presence of meat, other bones, and we've been doing it for the last 8 months, and it has not increased any odors. And we found that the system still takes about 6 weeks from start to finish. We can make finished compost in 6 weeks if we follow that 145-degree Fahrenheit for 6 weeks, right? So every time we turn it, it cools down, but like 2 days later, it kicks back up to 145, and we're able to meet the PFRP, which is the process to further reduce pathogens. And that's how we make sure that when you're processing meat, dairy, bone, you're not giving E. coli to farms or other pathogens that might harm the plants. So we found that we have success. We can process this in the most environmentally friendly way by hand. And we can process meat, dairy, bone, which is the same thing that DSNY is doing. So the goal for actually processing meat, dairy, bone is to remove the argument of, well, community scale composting can't process everything. And I think it's hard for residents when we tell them you have a smart bin where you can process anything that grows. But if you take it to the farmer's market, we can't take bagels, we can't take dairy, we can't take cooked rice, we can't take processed food. So I started to remove those rules from my composting sites to make it easier for residents. So if we tell them to use a smart bin, it's the same as if they were using my compost site. It's the same as if they were coming to one of our small scale compost sites. And we found an increase in participation because of that. Because residents are like, okay, I don't have to manage the food waste too much. If it's food waste, it goes. The only thing we haven't been able to break down in our systems, even though we reach the right temperatures, are compostable plastics. So we're still very much against single-use plastics. We try to make sure people reuse. I may be doing a pilot with a Manhattan SWAB member, I think Matt Savello. He has the Scan Scrap app, and we're going to try and play around with that, do some experiments with his compostable bags, because he says they're made different. So I want to prove that they're made different, because if it works, then we'll use it. But if it doesn't work, then we'll find another way to kind of use that app in a more earth-friendly way. But in order to build these compost sites in the public housing community, we actually have to start by rat-proofing it. We have to make sure rats can't get underneath. So we excavate the land, we compact it, we level it. After we do all of that work to make sure it's a nice sturdy surface, we actually start to put tarp down, we put steel screen down. then we put sand, we put gravel, sand, and then pavers. And this creates a nice rat-proof base where even in public housing, even in an urban area where we're surrounded by buildings, one of our sites is literally a few steps away from the compactor, the trash compactor that serves the whole development. And we've been able to eliminate rodent pressure there by using this system. On top of that, we then build the 3-bin system. First, we use steel screen. Steel screen is our friend. It lasts a very long time if you take care of it. But then on top of that, I noticed that the 3-bin systems that I was working with when I worked at Red Hook, and I would go around the city just, exploring different composting sites, I realized that they were using pine, and pine breaks down really fast. You'll have termites in your compost system. Some people use Doug fir. Even Doug fir, if you don't treat it right, it can rot, it can warp. So I use cedar, which is really expensive and hard to find sometimes. But if you build a 3-bin system with cedar and you take care of it over the years, that can last you 15 years without breaking down, warping, and rotting. And that reduces the carbon footprint of us building 3-bin systems in New York City or any urban environment. You want to choose the materials that last as long as possible, and then adequate ventilation. Because they're passive aeration systems, we use this open side concept, but we also use wood to reinforce this steel screen so the steel screen doesn't pop off. Some people use the 3-bin method, but they don't use the slabs surrounding the system. And what happens is the pressure from all of that compost pushing on the screen actually buckles the staples, and then rats have their way in. So if you're gonna make it rat proof, make it rat proof, and think about what the rats are thinking about. Some people tell me I think like a rat because when I go to a compost site, I'm like, I smell something, there shouldn't be any odors. So hardscape is another way to make your windrows resistant. You can see a few pictures here where we're actually building the scraps. We started off at Williamsburg, our largest site, by processing just flour waste and wood chips, and that's how we made our seal. So if you're like, I don't have anything to cover up my mounds and the rats are gonna get in, start with something that rats don't want to eat, like wood chips and flowers, and break that stuff down, pass it through your system, and then you'll have some seal that you can use to cover up the material that rats want. So on the top right-hand corner, you'll see us chopping up and blending some food scraps with carbon-rich materials like wood chips, leaves, spent grains sometimes people use, but that's really nitrogen-rich, so I wouldn't use spent grains. Just stick with coffee chaff, wood shavings, paper bags, wood chips. These are all things that can absorb moisture, and it can actually help you break down the material without having foul odors. Once you mix all that material up, you see there's a nice pyramid-shaped mound on the lower left corner. And after that material is sitting there, then we have to cover that up. If we build a windrow out in the open with raw food scraps and we leave it there, the pigeons are going to be there by the end of the night. And when you get there in the morning, the rats will have built their own mansion with an oven, a refrigerator. They have everything they need in that compost pile. So after we build these mounds, we actually cover it up with a seal. And the seal is about 12 inches thick of more mature material. And then the final key to keeping these systems rat-proof and making sure you're not a nuisance in the community and you're actually making great compost is aerating this material once a week. And that's where we get that exposure, right? When residents come to drop off their food scraps, that's one point where we're interacting with the public, where we're showing them how to separate their organics. We're teaching them, hey, maybe you should remove the fruit stickers. Zip ties, twist ties are not compostable. Those tea bags that are made out of plastic, but they feel like aluminum, those are not compostable. And this is one point of interacting with residents, but the most interesting thing that residents want to do is they actually want to build a compost pile. They want to turn these compost piles. They want to aerate these compost piles. So we have a model on our site where if we're there processing, residents are able to come in and help us. We don't stop people. There aren't any NDAs like some of the sites have throughout New York City. We're very friendly of the community, the public. They can come in our site, they can learn. We're open book. If you want to learn our techniques, come during one of our work days and you can learn every technique. We don't hide any of the details. And then that also allows us to aerate it every week with human power and keep these mounds aerobic. If compost stays aerobic, it should never stink. So if you're on a compost site and they're telling you, oh, it stinks just a little bit, or I like that nice tangy smell, they have a compost nose and they have no clue that they have anaerobic compost that may be producing methane. So I want to, I want people to make that connection of if your compost makes you want to gag, you're probably producing things that the environment doesn't like. So you might want to clean up your compost, clean up your act, so that people who get the compost fever can keep coming back and engaging with the site, and you keep humans interacted and engaged in your site and they feel invested. But if you become a nuisance, then you're kind of creating that myth that compost stinks, that it smells like a landfill, that it increases rats. So we've proven at all of our sites, especially the ones in public housing, there shouldn't ever be odors, there should never be rat activity. And we've proven by doing this that we can actually create an integrated pest management solution for reducing rodents in these urban environments. So we've collaborated and partnered up with pest control, with the public housing, New York City Housing Authority, and we've been keeping track of rodent activity near the farms and the surrounding areas. And any sites that we build now, we actually want to build in places that have rodent problems, because we've proven that if we compost in these green spaces, we can eliminate the rodent activity. And by eliminating rodent activity in gardens on the NYCHA campus or the public housing campus, we can actually eliminate the use of rodenticides and other poisons that are harming our waterways, that are going into our land, that make it hard for us to grow edible food in New York City. But we also, we're pushing the boundaries as a community compost site by processing the meat, dairy, bone, and processed foods. So we're not going to tell you no bagels or no pizza or no rice. We really just eliminated that culture on our sites. And, if it grows, it goes. A compostable bag did not grow anywhere, so we don't take them. But if it grows, it goes. That's our rule. And then integrated pest management solutions, we already talked about. But then we have microbial inoculation. When I was at Red Hook, our compost process took about 4 months from start to finish. Because we don't have that amount of time in these small spaces, we had to speed up the process. And by using our finished compost, and this is compost that's ready to be applied to the land, we use that material on our brand new compost piles. And some people say, like, why would you do that? You're wasting all of your energy. But by doing that, we've actually sped up our process to where we can make finished compost that has met that PFRP, the process to further reduce pathogens, within 6 weeks. And we can use it on the land right after that 6-week period. So we've kind of challenged the boundaries. We've pushing the boundaries on what community composting is. And hopefully we can create a new handbook in the future where it's a lot easier for all New York City residents to compost, no matter where they are. They know that the material they put to the side is going to be composted, and they don't have to deal with we don't take scraps, so you might want to put that in the black bag and send it to landfill. That used to break my heart, and that was another reason why I wanted to kind of challenge the science and figure out if we can make it happen in small scale composting sites. Last year alone, I think we processed about 834,000 pounds of organic waste. 27 NYCHA residents have been hired and trained throughout from when we started in 2021 till now. 25,000 plus New York City residents interacted with, and those numbers need to be updated because we haven't updated it yet. And then 282,000 pounds of compost distributed. And when I say distributed, I mean 98% of that went right onto public housing campuses to grow more food, to grow bushes, to enhance gardens. And the other 2% went to residents who participate in the program. They get it when they want it. Last year alone, we actually started a pilot with the New York City Housing Authority. Well, we basically joined a pilot that they were doing where at all of our sites, we processed all of the leaf waste the leaves that came from the trees. And that came out to be about 31 tons in 2 months of just leaf waste. And the the public housing residents were kind of what, you had kids playing in the leaf piles, but you had the NYCHA workers, the public housing workers that were asking like, if we bag these up, why would you empty those bags? When we take them to DSNY, they don't empty the bags. And I had to tell them like, when you send these to DSNY, they have a machine that debags it. And when they debag these leaves, some of those leaves get shredded and ends up in the finished process. What we do here is we're taking it out, we're dumping out the bag, we're folding it, maybe reusing it a few times before we throw it out. But on top of that, we're pulling out the contamination from the leaves at the same time. So it was just amazing to watch the public housing workers kind of learn the process and start to get a sense of joy of the leaves that they collected, because they know that it's going to be used as mulch. It's going to be used to enhance the look of the campus. But on top of that, we reduced that waste and turned it into a resource, and kind of proven that it isn't waste in the first place. It just is a resource that the city's throwing away. So that was exciting to actually start to process the leaf waste, and we're going to keep that going this year, making sure none of those resources leave. And now we had to like hunt down a bunch of contractors. When they cut trees, they take the mulch somewhere else. And we're like, no, leave the mulch on the campus. Those trees captured that carbon here. They've been capturing that carbon on this campus for 25 to 50 years. We want that mulch here. We don't want to spend carbon to get rid of it and take it somewhere else. We want to keep it in-house. So I encourage everyone, if you have contractors chipping a tree somewhere in your community and you have a community garden that could use that mulch, make those connections. And that's something that we do now, is we try to make connections so the resources aren't lost. We're still partnering with the woodworkers at Red Hook to get our carbon-rich material. And we have a brown bank. So if you ever want to come to pick up wood shavings at our Williamsburg site, we have more than enough wood shavings for hundreds of community gardens. So if you want to come and get it and you have a means to come and collect some wood shavings to enhance your composting process, feel free to come to our site and utilize that resource that we provide for all New York City residents, not only NYCHA residents. I'm trying to do this fast. And then finally, I made this little Pokeball that kids really love. Maybe one day we'll actually create a Pokeball out of some wood chips or something. But composting feeds gardens that feed community. Composting locally diverts waste from landfill. It educates residents and creates jobs, and it rebuilds urban soil. What I tell everyone is, the soil has the ability to capture carbon. And if we rebuild New York City, we can capture carbon, but we can also enhance the cooling effect in the city, reducing that heat island effect and making summers a little bit more tolerable. And then on that grand scale, if we can prove that large cities like New York City can process anything they grow in their backyards, and everyone adopts that culture and every country gets behind this, reducing all of our food waste and diverting that from landfill and composting it. If everyone in the world right now said, we're going to compost all of our food waste, we can slow down climate change by 30%. And I think that's a big number. And that's even more important to me than taking all of the gas cars and selling them to Africa and putting, electric cars in New York City. I think it's more important for us to manage our food waste before we start shipping our leftover gas cars to other countries so they can continue to burn gas in their countries. But yeah, that's Compost Power. We're making compost cool, and I want to open it up for questions if I have time.
Yes,
All right.
you do. Please
So I'm
do.
going to
open
stop
up the
sharing.
questions. Does anybody want to moderate the questions? You want to? Or it's too much? Okay. Okay. Let's see. Oh, I think that was the first question. Greg Todd asked, have you considered using hemlock wood for your 3-bin systems?
Not really. I haven't had much experience with it. I think I just like the way cedar smells and looks, but maybe I'll research some hemlock and see what do like a little project and figure out if that's more rot resistant than the cedar.
Okay. Rob Saffer asks, do your sites all have gardens affiliated with the compost operation to let people grow food and see the compost at work?
Yes, all of our sites, with the exception of the Williamsburg site, we do have a farm on campus, but we don't really collaborate too much because it's they use fish to grow their food, so there's not much connection there. But there's a garden there where they can see, and we have a pollinator meadow that we use our compost on. But yes, we always connect the dots. Every single one of our sites, you can see us using our finished compost. You can see what it can do, and we've proven that anything you can grow in this climate, our compost actually helps you grow it. When you're growing shrubs, perennials, we'll leave the wood chips in there to allow the mycelium to take root and create that network. But if you're growing little seedlings and direct planting, we'll probably sift that compost. So yeah,
Awesome. Do you do the same thing that I remember learning that in Red Hook, the Green City Force Farm used to say that if you brought your food scraps, you could get an equal weight of produce. Do you do it
yeah.
that way?
So I think they get more produce than they bring scraps in most cases, but that's how we get people engaged is they either volunteer once a year or they bring their food scraps, and most people just bring their food scraps.
Mhm.
And by doing that, it's like a better enhancement of getting their produce. But any NYCHA resident that wants produce, they get it when the farm stand is every Saturday. But bringing their food scraps is just one way where we know we're kind of educating them and we're changing behavior in the household. So yeah, that's a thing. If you're accepting food scraps, you either want to give them finished compost where they can grow food or plants, or you want to give them food, which in most of our sites, that's what they get. They get fresh produce grown in their backyard for
Nice.
free.
That's great. Okay, so Susan Frazier says that she missed the explanation of how you Compost Power eliminates rats from the surrounding areas in NYCHA.
Okay, yeah. So on top of increased human activity, which rats hate, what we also do is we started off at Green City Forest, and Green City Forest taught all of us how to farm. And by having the farming and horticultural experience that Green City Forest exposed us to, we're able to go into the gardens that are intended, and we kind of cut things that are overgrown, we cut grass, but we also go around keeping track of rat tunnels. If we see a rat tunnel, we actually collapse that rat tunnel. And we also keep a tracker that NYCHA can see at all times, where if they see an increase in activity, pest control knows how to make more targeted attacks. So I think that's kind of it. It's that increased human activity, but also we are land stewards at the end of the day. And our job doesn't start with just turning our compost bins. It's also going around the community and seeing how we can beautify it, picking up trash, collapsing rat tunnels, and just being very vigilant of our community and making sure that we are enhancing it.
Yay. Excellent. Ellen Cooper asks, where do you put all that compost that's created? I think you talked about it a little bit, but maybe you want to go over it again.
All the compost either goes on the farms on the site, it goes to residents' homes if they want it. We use some of the compost on tree pits. There's usually gardens around the campus that aren't directly associated with the composting. We give that to them. So none of the compost leaves our campuses. The only compost that travels sometimes is the compost at the Williamsburg compost site. Whenever one of our public housing compost sites needs extra compost or there's a specific bed we want to try and remediate, we'll ship compost or truck compost from the Williamsburg site to one of the NYCHA farms. So almost all of the compost we create either ends up in a resident's house or predominantly on public housing land to beautify the community. We also give compost to Domino Park and a few tree pits in the Williamsburg area as well.
Nice. Mary Ellen Sullivan is really inspired by your story, and she asked if you have any advice to the New York City Compost Project in light of the recent budget cuts.
That's a big one. I would it's something I've been saying for a very long time. I think community compost projects started out with a really grassroots approach. Somewhere along the lines, they lost their roots and became like more of like a city engine, city funded entity. I think doubling back and figuring out where those roots are, going back into the community, diversifying funding, and using this as an opportunity to figure out how they can best serve all communities and, you know, staying away from those little niche communities like Compost Power. We serve anyone who wants it. You know, no one's left out. We aren't going to certain communities. I think that's the best way. But now that they're not funded, now's the time to diversify that funding and find different streams of funding and make new community connections and kind of go out and see what's happening, because the Compost Project kind of operated in this nice little bubble. And I was part of that from 2015 to 2020, where when I got laid off and my job was never restored and everyone forgot about Domingo, I went out to the community and I started learning, and I'm like, wow, like this innovation, like residents are really doing it. So just going out, see what's happening, become part of the community again. Not saying they're not community driven, but they lost that grassroots approach somewhere along the way.
And you know, I guess you're saying too, like there's enough to go around, and the same business model as yours could happen like 50 times over.
Exactly. Yeah. I think for us, it's just making partners, showing people that we're a resource, rebuilding community and quality. We don't give out bad batches of compost. We call it diamond standard. We have diamond standard compost, and that's what makes it click.
That's excellent. So maybe Vondra's doing a back of the envelope calculations to take your business model, but she says, can you share what's your budget and your funding? I don't know if you want to share that, but you know,
maybe not all of it, but
yeah.
it's we have some private funders, some foundations. Of course, we started with the David Prize. So if you have a really big idea and you want to push that forward, the David Prize accepts applicants every year, and that's 200,000 of untethered funds, right? They're not controlling what you do with it. They're not asking for any reporting. That's one way. Another way, you know, make connections with foundations. But our biggest partner, our biggest ally, our biggest supporter from day one has been Green City Force, and I'm thankful to graduate from that program. So that AmeriCorps connection allows me and Green City Force to work together on grants. And when we do apply for grants and we do apply for funding, it shows that there are many entities, you know, Green City Force, New York City Housing Authority, NYCHA Farms, NYCHA Gardens, just basically working with Green City Force has been, you know, our heaven. They're amazing. And I think everyone needs to find an organization that shares your values, shares your mission, is doing similar work, and partner up, team up, and, you know, create an unstoppable operation that people know we need. So I would say my staff at max so far, we have about 9 staff members. Those 9 staff members would cost us about I'd say $1 million a year, maybe. So that's our operating budget's a little over $1 million a year. And eventually hoping to find ways to create income streams that can sustain that. So we don't, you know, any grants we get can help us do extra work and more work. So I think for us, it's really how can you do more with little. As a person who came from the Compost Project, when I started, I'm like, all right, how do I keep things going? And there were community activists in the past who told me like Red Hook was only possible because of the Compost Project and because of DSNY funding. So when I started Compost Power, another thing I wanted to do was to prove that it really depends on the people. It doesn't depend on government funding. It really depends on like, are you gonna settle for anything less than what the community needs? And Green City Forest and Compost Power do not settle. We're always looking for new funding streams. We're always trying to get funding to further our work, to expand. But when we do expand in a smart way. So you're not just like expanding just to expand, but it's more intentional and it's more of like a cultivated approach to what we do.
Domingo, your words are a balm, I have to say. It's been such a time that's been so fraught with struggle, and maybe struggle can happen in a different direction. Someone's asking, Jeffrey is asking for your contact information. I don't know if you have
if you want, I can put it in the, can I put it in the chat? Where's this chat at?
I know.
Um,
I know. Do
where's
you have like an info at number, so that you're,
just email me here.
oh, that's nice. So personable. I don't know how many. Okay, so,
Seems like you can combine those two.
okay, wait, so,
Relationship with the city.
oh yeah, so people are asking you about your relationship with the city. If you've been able to convince the mayor and his team benefits of composting in light of all the cuts. And then, and then also, yeah, about policy, just like talking about your work with regards to changing policy.
I mean, I think, so the relationship with the city is, as always, I love New York City. I empathize with Mayor Adams and anyone who has to take a budget like New York City's and make sense of it. Um, and I think they do realize that composting is important. I do think they realize that. I think the problem is we got into like a screaming match with the mayor, right? And we started attacking him like, you don't care, you. And I think now we're dealing with like a defensive administration. So I think part of it is trying to kind of mediate that squabble that was had publicly when he cut the funds and all of these organizations started coming at the administration hard. I think we have to come back to the table in a different way and basically highlight everyone's successes. So we have the largest centralized composting network. Well, if they were composting, we have the largest centralized organic diversion program, I think, in the country, one of the largest. We also have the most diversified community composting network in the country, right? So New York City is, I keep seeing headlines that community composting is dead, which is a little bit of a smack in the face for all of us who are still doing it. But I think what we need to show is that, the curbside program would be nothing without the New York City Compost Project advocating for the last however years they were doing it, right? Since 2015 or 2012, when they brought it back to today, the New York City Compost Project had a large hand in doing that outreach, that education. It became something that, when you thought New York City Compost Project, you thought curbside program. Big Reuse was like one of the main outreach people for the curbside program. So instead of saying like, this is horrible, because the funding was cut, we have to find better ways to enhance how that partnership made sense, and that partnership made us one of the most successful at diverting organics. Now we have to figure out how to process that locally. How can we make anaerobic digestion a little more sustainable? But in order to do that, we have to sit down and we have to come together. We can't do it without DSNY. We can't do it without community composters. We all need to work together in order for us to get to a zero waste city. So I think we need to figure out how to do that. We need to figure out how to sit down with Mayor Adams, Commissioner Tisch, and say, hey, what we had going was amazing. How do we get back to that? How do we figure out funding going forward? How can we help you get the funding? How can we, we need to, all of these minds that are angry and frustrated and going through the stages that I went through in 2020, go through the stages, and then afterwards, try and find a way to come back to the table and have a meaningful conversation where we highlight everyone's successes.
Nice. So Lee asks if your sites have ever faced any pushback from city regulations. And if so, what would your advice be to other community composting sites?
So thankfully, no, because we aren't at that scale yet. I think that's why we use the micro scale, like building multiple sites throughout the city, sort of satellite sites. But one pushback we did get was like location. They didn't want us to build our compost site in Williamsburg too close to the water, because of concerns of leachate, like what was happening at few other sites that were on the waterfront, not to name any names, but when it rains, water would go into the river and contaminate. So we just came with a different approach, and the landlord that we were working with said, okay, we'll push the compost site back, and we pushed it back. So whenever you get pushback because of some kind of code or, EPA, DEC, DEP want to kind of push some paperwork on you, just think outside the box, find another solution. There isn't one size fits all. And you want to build things in a way, like if you were to become a DEC registered site, you're going to need to build your site in a certain way. So I actually build my sites as if I were going to register with DEC, so that when we do get to that scale where we have to register, we've already thought of everything. We know where our water's going. We're doing the first in, first out with the carbon rich material, keeping track of our temperatures, testing for heavy metals and pathogens. These are all of the things that the Department of Environmental Conservation is going to want to know that you're keeping track of, even if you're a small scale composter. So as composters, we have to regulate ourselves, self-regulate. Don't wait for EPA to come and say, hey, this is not acceptable. I think we should all, because we're composters, we all care about the environment. This is why we're doing it. So if you care about the environment, try not to fall into that more, and figure out how you can scale appropriately. And you're thinking about everything. So if you don't know where your trash is going, that's an oversight. If you don't know where the water's going on your site, that's an oversight. Before I build a site, I stand in the rain, just staring at the water for a few hours just to see where the water's going. And I think everyone should be that intentional when building these sites, so we don't end up with a muddy mess that just doesn't look pleasant.
Nice. So Rob asks a big hypothetical question. How many Domingos and how much space and how much money would we need to handle all the city's food scraps in the communities?
I think we need Domingos.
Yeah.
I've been looking for Domingos for a long time. I'm looking for a Domingo.
Yeah.
But I think what we need less, like not Domingos, but we just need more to handle all of the waste in New York City. We'll need more compost sites. So we have one compost site in East Harlem, right? We'll need one on every block, right? One on every block, which we have gardens. So every garden should be composting food waste. Every community farm should be composting food waste. Libraries, schools, parks, we should be composting everywhere you look. And then on top of that, we should be integrated with DSNY's network of hauling and truck routes, because if we get overwhelmed and we're like, hey, we really can't process this week, we should be able to lean on DSNY and say, hey, like, can you come and take a load of this material for us because we're overwhelmed? Or actually working with DSNY so we have as many of these as possible, and DSNY can still do their collections, but it reduces the load that DSNY has, right? And if it reduces that load and that demand that DSNY has for, increasing capacity, then DSNY can focus more on tailoring their systems, right? How can we make anaerobic digestion a little bit more sustainable? How can we scale up at Soundview? How can we scale up at Staten Island? I saw they were doing expansion at the Staten Island compost facility, and the first thing that came to mind was, are we allowed to bring waste from outside of Staten Island to that facility? Because I thought we weren't. So did that change? And if that changed, then great. But if not, then we need more of those facilities throughout New York City to process this waste. And everyone should be finding ways to have some human power doing some of that work as well. Like at Staten Island, I would have humans sorting the material before it went into a turner, so we can get rid of any glass or plastic bags. But that's for the future, right? But I think, Rob, we need it everywhere. And that's the only way to get to zero waste. And eventually, Rob, if everyone's composting, we will change the culture in the apartment. They would change the things they buy. And then eventually we start to get to the production issue. Because composting, at the end of the day, is a Band-Aid on the overproduction and overconsumption that we have in America. So if we can get exposure on the food waste, and how even if residents are recycling the waste at the table, the supermarket still has 50% food waste that was intentional. So then we can start to change behavior and then kick the buck back to production. Because if we only focus on food waste in the household, we're kind of greenwashing. If we're not worried about the issue that is on the farms, that is in the supermarkets, the intentional waste, and that's what we're going to get to eventually.
Yeah, exactly. I like that you said a compost site on every corner. It's kind of goes along with my apocalypse action plan. That's the first thing I would do. So Jeffrey Sanoff says is from CB 13 and says we have 8 or 9 NYCHA properties in Coney Island. In the future, I'll contact you so you can present to our CB 13. We need this program in our community.
Yeah, let me know. We're working with the Manhattan SWAB right now on like a wish of that there's like an EPA grant for 20 million where we want to build 12 compost sites and farms in New York City in the public housing campuses. But on top of that, we're always looking for meaningful build out of new sites. Staten Island is one that like we'd love to come to Staten Island and build more. We're looking at Stapleton houses right now. But any and all are welcome, even if you want to come look at our system, learn, volunteer, and build something similar. We need more of these. I wouldn't say more Domingos, but we need more passionate people that are, interested in rebuilding their community and, kind of making it better. So yes, reach out to me. I'm all for it.
Okay, awesome. So Michael asked a question about volunteers. How do you sustain, maintain, encourage your volunteers?
So the way I sustain, maintain, and encourage volunteers is we aren't really dependent on them. I think the Reha compost site, we were dependent on volunteers. We processed at peak. It was about 200 tons of material annually with 2,000 plus volunteers. And when the volunteers came, it was like, turn. You can't take a break. We have to get this done. So Compost Power, we kind of overstaff our largest site just so when the volunteers come, it's more of a fun experience. It's let's have some fun, let's turn some piles, keeping your site clean. They call me the Gordon Ramsay of composting. That's another way to keep volunteers engaged. But on top of that, making sure they know that they're special and we can't get that extra work done. We can't save our bodies if we were only the staff were doing it all the time. So that's how I keep them invested. We try to have fun. We try to make it a light environment, even though sometimes we do dive into some deep conversations, right? There's a lot of war happening. There's a lot of murder happening throughout the world right now. And sometimes it's not easy to shy away from that. So we even have deep conversations. And I think that's what makes us unique is we're willing to have tough conversations, but we're also willing to just have fun and compost.
That's awesome. So everybody's giving you huge clapping in the chat, and Mary Ellen wants you to run for office, please. You would probably have a team here who would be on your staff if you wanted to do that. And Uli's asking how we can volunteer. Should we just email you? Should we go to your website?
Yeah, just email me, but also every Tuesday at Williamsburg, if you want to just show up, up. We'll be out there. We start at 9 in the morning. If you show up at like 10, we'll be situated and ready for you. And then at Williamsburg every Tuesday, we go to lunch at 12:30. So that would be the first session for volunteers. It would be like 10 to 12:30. However, we won't hold you hostage. If you have to leave, you can leave. And then we come back about 1:30 after lunch, and we're usually there till about 3:30. Sometimes the day goes a little later, but at 3:30, we start to notice the volunteers are kind of looking at the clock. So we kind of give them the opportunity to leave as always. And then at our public housing campuses, we kind of volunteer in line with Green City Forest. But then we have 2 sites that aren't at Green City Forest Farms, where during our food scrap drop-offs, we also allow residents to come through and volunteer with us. Usually during our food scrap drop-offs at our public housing campuses, that would be the time when we're processing. So when residents are dropping off the food scraps, we can show them what their compost looks like or their food scraps look like a few weeks in. Yeah,
Nice.
but feel free to email me and we could, if you want like a big group to come, please let me know so I have
that's
enough
great.
gloves.
We should do a swab volunteer event. That's a great idea.
That would be cool. Yeah, and then eventually I want to do like a 5 borough bike tour of our compost sites, but that is a very long bike ride, and I think I'm the only the one crazy enough to do it so far.
I love
So
it.
yeah.
Nice. Are there any questions in the room?
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay.
Hi, Domingo, this is very inspiring and very uplifting at a time when we're sad about what's going on with the other parts of the compost in the city. Thanks. I just wanted to mention, and you might be aware of this, it was good to hear you talk about that you started to process leaf collection. And I'm here in Flatbush. We do schoolyard gardening, etc. And some of the past 3 years, we've been doing leaf collection bin bills, very simple, and showing residents, keep your leaves, don't let them go, blah, blah, blah. Part of that push was when we discovered that the Long Island Compost Company is getting all our leaves from New York City because it's required by, I'm a private landscaper and I do public gardening, to haul them to these places. And I checked their budget, which was $76 million they grossed. They're earning a shitload off of our leaves, and they bag it up. They put it into the Hampton compost bag, sell it back to Lowe's, and then it costs us, or whoever has to can buy this stuff, the compost, $18 a bag for $14. So 40 pounds. So I know you were saying earlier that you were trying to figure out how parts of your work is really inspiring. And do you consider that if you do have too many leaves on these properties that you might make that part of your industry to bag stuff aside from giving it back out free, to needed areas, maybe creating a commercial product or not? I was just curious.
Yeah,
And I have
think,
a second question. So
yeah.
after
Okay,
Okay, all right. I'm gonna answer this one. I'm gonna
Susan.
answer this one quick, and then you can get to the second question. So I think for us, selling it is kind of tricky because it's on New York City Housing Authority land. So if someone were to sell it, it would be NYCHA, right? NYCHA would, and maybe that someone will hear this and say, hey, why isn't NYCHA making money off this? And they'll make it a thing. But the reason why we jumped in on this pilot is because NYCHA's been doing it for the past few years, where they're trying to figure out how can we keep these leaves local. So I think that if we get to that point where like it's a lot of leaves, we can't manage it, NYCHA may do it and it may go into the bucket of funding for public housing, which I'm all for. But I try not to let the material or the resources leave the community. So if we were to do something like that, the funding that we get, instead of like funding our staff, it would have to fund something for the residents. And that's how I would do that. It's like, okay, we've created this bucket of funding. How do the residents want to use this? And then let them vote on what to do with that funding every year. Kind of like participatory budgeting.
Nice.
We're actually on the ballot for participatory budgeting in Manhattan coming up in April to build a new compost site. So that's
Nice.
exciting. But yeah, that's how I would do it. And I think NYCHA would be the one to make money off that, not us. We're just humble servants.
Well, you're showing them how things can be done differently. That's great. And connected to it, my second question was, I don't know a lot about, but I heard about the Forest for All or New York City, that whole project of counting all the trees on private land and then matching that with parks count and really getting a sense of what's going on with all our trees. But I didn't know, with that 70 agency nonprofit collective initiative that's out there, how much they overlap with BK SWAB and the other SWABs, and understand the connection about keeping our leaves in the city so that we can create soil and then work on carbon sequestration, blah, 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 improve soil. Is there any conversation out there that's marrying all of that, the large picture? And do you get the sense the city's even aware of it in the planning department or I don't know. I just don't hear anything,
Yeah,
you
I
know,
haven't heard.
overarching.
I haven't heard any meaningful conversations about that. I know Green City Forest did do a massive tree survey for I think a year ago, and it was like a 3-year project where they were canvassing all of the trees on public housing, and that was part of a larger survey. But I think it's now that we're kind of tying this leaf waste with time that workers are spending. So now that we've been doing this, we've been able to well, what also comes with leaves are branches. And when these workers have branches, they can't put leaves in the bag. So they kind of just put the branches in a pile and the branches just kind of sit there. So if we mulch the branches, we've created mulch on site. So I think now that as I said to Rob, now that they're exposed to how much work goes into collecting leaves and collecting branches, now NYCHA's having that internal conversation of okay, how do we really tackle the issue of organic waste? Because it isn't only food scraps, it's also a massive amount of yard waste. And then when the city did what they did in Queens last year, when they were well, the year before, they had 3 months of composting and it was all yard waste and leaves, and the amount of leaves that went out, I'm pretty sure all entities are now okay, what is going on with our organic waste in the form of leaves, branches, cut down trees, but also I'm hoping we can also kind of make the connection of leaves, lack of leaves when it comes to our tree health. Maybe we can, now that we're paying attention to this, now we can focus on our tree health and how we can address the issues of, certain trees that died after Sandy that we just never replanted. So there's a lot of tree pits in New York City that we haven't replanted and they're just dirt. So the conversations are being had, not any meaningful yet, and they haven't got to a place where we can say something like that's happening. But I will tell you that everyone's now yard waste. What do we do with this? Why are we paying to get rid of this?
Susanna, if I could help answer that question, most of what the city has done over the last 10 or 12 years is to initiate a lot of programs, but without a lot of planning.
Yes.
Yeah.
And as a consequence, the program sort of fell apart for various reasons or were underperformed. But about a year ago, there was a comprehensive interagency study of all things organics that was launched by the city, and it was one of the victims of the budget cuts last fall. It got through its first 6 months, and it was intended to be an 18 to 24 month study, literally, of all things organics in the city, all different types of sources, materials, different options for processing, what gets handled here, what gets handled there, all that sort of stuff. And that was intended to be the thoughtful, comprehensive, planning document and process with public engagement to be built into it as it unfolded. And then unfortunately it got suspended because of the budget cuts last fall.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
And
And
I
thank
just
you,
wanna say-
Domingo. That was really.
Yeah,
both of
I
you,
just
yeah.
want to say, Susanna, please join the SWAB. Come and join us, and we need your
Yes.
input. That's a great idea, and bring it to the SWAB. Do you want to say something, Lacey?
No.
It's just that we're running.
I just feel like we're.
I know we're running kind of late. I know everybody's excited, but do you want to ask a question, Oliver? Okay. Oliver's gonna forego his question, the self-sacrificing impulse of the SWAB chairs. Okay, so thank you, Domingo, so much for your presentation, and thanks everybody for your great questions. We're really delighted. This was very exciting, and what an injection of excitement you bolstered our enthusiasm.
New York City is the best.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. So you're welcome to stay, Domingo, or we do not feel bad if you have to leave.
Yes, I will hop off. My cats are missing me and my wife is hungry, so I must.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
All right. Thank you. Thanks very much. So thanks very much. Let's move on to Lacey with your update.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I will try to keep this brief. Can you hear me okay? I'm still not sure how our audio is working. Okay, I just wanted to quickly talk about a couple of things. I know many of you have been engaged in some stuff that's going on at the council. I did submit testimony last week on behalf of the borough president for the hearing on organics capacity. I think we hit all the main points that you're all very familiar with, but additionally, I just wanted to mention that we really actually focused on intro 55, which was part of that hearing, even though it's not really about organics. I think partially because there's some momentum potentially to pass it soon, and that bill was a bill that the BP introduced when he was in the council that is now held by Councilmember Nurse, that would require DSNY to accept commercial waste at the city's marine transfer stations. I think most of you are familiar with this, but I think the point of that is essentially to get trucks off the streets. Because the marine transfer stations, rather than sending their trash out on long haul trucks, they send it out on barges over the water. So it's preferable, and also one of the big things that kind of remains to be seen in the implementation of commercial waste zones is going to be where the commercial haulers choose to tip, and also what consolidation within that industry as the zones start being implemented will mean for those facilities. And so providing more options. There's an MTS in all of the boroughs except for the Bronx. Yeah, and because they send theirs to the one in Manhattan. And so we're very supportive of that legislation and hope that it is going to move quickly. We'll be submitting testimony for the budget hearing on March 14th. And looking forward to that, and hopefully working together with the SWAB on some of the points that we'll be making there. And then I also wanted to extend the invite to everyone to the borough president's reschedule of the State of the Borough, which got postponed because of the snowstorm. So it's going to be happening on March 13th at City Tech, starting at doors at 6. Yeah, join us for that, and then go to the budget hearing the next day. Fun. Yes, Kendall, I think there are both, to answer your question. Bronx uses the transfer station at Hunts Point, which we also like because it goes on rail and not on long haul trucks additionally. Yes.
Hey, Lacey, I went to the Manhattan Borough President's State of the Borough address yesterday afternoon. Lovely event, all that sort of stuff. There was a slight mention of street trees, but that was the closest he came to talking about anything environmental.
I
So-
also went. It was nice. We like to do a little cross borough support.
So I'm curious whether Borough President Reynoso's address will say anything about or environmental related issues.
Yes. That's all I'm gonna say.
Good.
We'll find out.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you very much. Coalition updates. Save Our Compost.
Sure. I can start, and then there's a couple other folks I know, as I always say, that are also on it. Can you all hear me okay? I don't have to yell to everyone. Okay.
You could talk
Okay.
louder.
I can talk louder?
Yeah.
Okay.
It would be helpful.
Okay, I'll talk a little louder. So lots of things going on in the compost world, as Domingo mentioned, in different realms. Lacey mentioned the hearing that was last week, and so there was some focus on that. We heard at that hearing that there was, they thanked the community composters, but there was a lot of mention of the, all-encompassing current system that's going to everyone coming up. So there was that. There's the budget hearings on the 14th, as Lacey also mentioned, so that'll be a bit of a focus for the Save Our Compost. I wasn't involved in this, but I know several Save Our Compost folks were at the roundtable discussion on just waste in general, that I think the Speaker Adams' office and Councilmember Abreu's office had, so I can't really speak to that, but I don't know that anyone in this room was here. It doesn't look like it, so.
Matt did it.
Right, they only had one representative from each organization that was invited, so they had a bit of a discussion there, but I don't have like notes or details on what happened. I just know it was, it went well. Let's see, I'm going through my notes here because there was a lot that happened in the last month. The teach-ins that I mentioned that happened across 3 boroughs and virtually in January are continuing on. There's some this weekend at Making Brooklyn Bloom at Brooklyn Botanic Garden. They're going to be redoing some shortened versions of them. And then Crazy for Compost is at New York Botanical Garden on the 16th. So that's also happening. Let me see what else I have. Several members of the Save Our Compost Coalition are meeting with Councilmember Abreu tomorrow to also just talk about where things are at, where things can go, and where we can support and work together. So there's ongoing discussions with them. We did actually, on behalf of Save Our Compost Coalition, there was a request made to meet with Mayor Adams, and I know that there was a meeting with the urban ag team, Kiana and Evan, I believe. I have no updates on that because that just happened like Friday. So we haven't had meetings, but that occurred. So we'll see what happens there. I'm just checking my notes because there was a lot of things going on. And then we had a education subcommittee meeting this morning, and we're working on a plan to just educate the public again, because a lot of people think that it's fine and it's just moving forward, and it's not, as we know. The one other thing that we're trying to figure out, which we found out about last week, is that the Queensbridge site for big reuse was told that they can no longer be on their site, which is on Parks Land, after their current lease expires in the end of June, I think. So we're again figuring out what to do, how to support what's going on there. So it's lots of things going on. So
Thank you.
and I think our next meeting is next week, our next like larger group meeting. So we'll see at post Councilmember Abreu meeting. So
Thank you.
we'll be in touch with whatever we can do, but like, I think also the next focus will be on the sanitation budget hearing. Yeah.
Okay. Is there anybody else have something to add to that? Who's goes to the meetings?
I was gonna say, do you want to mention now, or does Mary Ellen want to mention now the rally on Wednesday?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Do you?
I'll let Mary Ellen, I think she's got more, if she's able to talk about it. There is a rally on Wednesday. Yep, I see she's unmuted.
Okay.
Yep, it's at 11 a.m. on Wednesday at 52 Chambers Street. It is the People's Budget campaign that's launching, and they support restoring all funding for community composting, as well as for parks, for libraries, for SNAP, for housing vouchers. Their big campaign slogan is "Care, Not Cuts." And they've been very supportive of community composting. So if anyone would like to attend, I can provide the sign-up sheet that CUNY has put out in the chat in just a second. And again, it is Wednesday at 11 a.m. at City Hall, 52 Chambers, Tweed Steps.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
I can also add, because we had a lot of discussion about this. There was, though I don't know what happened because I wasn't able to attend the hearing. There was a hearing about water on Friday, like water in general, but I believe something was happening possibly with Gail Brewer's bill on composting in Parks Land. And again, I don't have the full information on that, But, and I haven't heard any summaries. I'm not as good about finding out where all the written testimony, maybe I'm looking at Kendall, because maybe you have the information when after the city council hearings, isn't the public testimonies available for review for everyone, right? I just don't know where to find it.
You're muted.
Oh, you're muted.
It's generally posted like 5 to 7 days afterwards. I just actually looked about 10 minutes ago in the transcript and the hearing compilation, the testimony compilation from last Tuesday's hearing has been posted.
Which one was okay, the 27th. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the
Okay.
council oversight hearing. I guess it was,
Could you,
yeah.
if you still have it handy, can you put it in the chat? And then I'll know where to look going forward. Or is it under like, I was trying to find it before.
Well, if you go to the, the council's website is, a little arcane to navigate, as we all know, but,
Yeah.
but if you go to the calendar button and scroll down to where there's still a date for last week's hearing, and then track that through. I did it on my phone,
Okay.
so I can't easily transfer it to,
Okay. Yeah,
so.
got it. That's helpful though, because I was trying to do it and I was like, I don't even know where to click. So,
Right.
Yeah, so the calendar button, and then you go to the, the different options for the hearing itself, for the committee report, the testimony compilation, and the transcript.
okay,
Whoever finds
great.
it first, share it in the listserv.
yeah, please, please.
Yeah, okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Mhm.
Maybe we should move on to reusable unless we're running over. I wanna make sure we get through stuff. Sorry. Can anybody do reusable? Did anybody attend that? Okay.
Oh, sorry, I did
Oh.
attend it.
Oh, good, okay, good.
Let's see, okay, so actually the next meeting is tomorrow. So this is from last month. They thought that they had found a new someone to take up the choose to reuse bill. There wasn't that much that they covered. They also talked about the announcement of that water fountain refilling station bill that Eric Botcher was putting forward. And there was a press conference on that. Yeah, that was pretty much, that was the bulk of what was talked about in last month's meeting, but the next meeting is tomorrow.
Okay, thanks. Thank you
No
a
problem.
lot. Okay, so executive committee, can we first start by approving the February general meeting minutes? I'm sure everybody read it because Debbie sent it out. Do we have a quorum?
We do.
Okay. Does anybody would like to? Yeah, Vasile, are you saying are you making a move are you moving that we approve? Do we have a second? Okay, thanks, Michael. All in favor?
We can't see.
I know,
They're screens or the votes. 1, 2, 3.
maybe you could go to participants, it'll show who's got their hands raised.
It shows it's right here, but. I think we're good. Oh, I forgot to raise my hand. Yeah, we're good.
Okay, good. Opposed? Any abstentions? We passed. Okay, so there's one more vote. April 1st is a Monday, but it's Easter Monday. Do we want to have our meeting on April 8th instead of April 1st?
For anyone who cares, there's no school on that Easter.
There's no school on Easter Monday if anybody's associated with schools or parent or. So does anybody move, let's say, does anybody move that we move our April meeting to the 8th?
I do.
Okay, does anybody second? Mary Ellen seconds, thank you.
I do, I second, Mary Ellen.
Thank you. And all in favor of moving it to not Easter Monday? Thank you. Okay, anybody opposed? Anybody, any abstentions? Okay, great, we're,
I
Gonna
just have to say, I have to clear that with the building.
oh,
So, I mean,
okay,
Did we originally give that date?
I think we said either
it's,
or.
yeah, it's probably
this is
fine,
something
but
that-
Okay,
just
thank
like
you.
stay tuned for
Yeah,
final
We'll,
confirmation.
yeah, we'll give you final confirmation.
Yeah.
Information.
Originally, the 8th was. It
Was the
like, it
date.
was like a date that we talked about.
Yeah, yeah,
I
I'll
think
look at
it's-
the
I just
original
looked at
emails.
The BP's calendar and he's got his news 12, so he won't be here, so that means it's probably fine.
Okay, all right. Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. Legislative committee. Do you have some updates?
Oh,
About-
yeah, so, last month,
Oh, let's talk about it right at the end.
Matt gave an update of, of that roundtable. He said about 2/3 of that roundtable was talking about reinstating community compost. They touched on some other things like litter baskets and commercial waste zones, lot cleaning. But yeah, a lot of the time was taken up by that, community compost talk. And he did suggest that we start compiling a list of questions that we have that we could perhaps like pass to, the new sanitation chair. So if anyone has any questions that they're really interested in from sanitation, you can send it to me or Rhonda, or Matt Savello. I think we'll start collecting those questions.
Yeah,
Sorry,
why
did you
don't
want to
you
see?
just take them off? Why don't you just take them
I'll
off?
take them. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. I'll put my email in the chat.
Okay, thank you. And then we'll go through you.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
The buck stops with Lori.
All right. There's my email. Feel free
Okay,
to email
thank
me.
you.
At some point I'll put a Word doc together so that we can share it out. Okay, and then we also talked about the testimony for the Organics Oversight Committee. We did put that together, and Rhonda, you read it, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay, great. Will you post that in the meeting?
Yeah, it's also in that fancy arcane city council link, but I'll definitely share it with everybody.
Can either dig down into the city council link and find it, or Rhonda will put it in the meeting minutes.
Yeah.
And I just want to say that we moved our meeting to March 14th to accommodate the Trash Academy folks. So we'll have it March 14th at 7 p.m. and we will probably discuss putting together some testimony for the preliminary budget meeting for sanitation and solid waste. So come and share your feelings on that.
Great. Thank you.
No problem.
Outreach.
You're gonna get tired of hearing from me, although this one is much shorter. Okay, we're good? Y'all can hear me? Maybe?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, I see some thumbs up. So the outreach committee, a lot of folks are also taking the academy. So we moved our meeting last week and last month and had a little bit shorter one. And we made it the schools subcommittee meeting because there were several folks that wanted to focus on outreach in schools. And I will say, I don't see Mark on, and Mark led the meeting. I was just taking notes, but a couple of things coming out of that meeting. One is we're working on a list of research sites that we can share with schools for field trips, composting sites, community gardens, things like that to sort of help engage and also, help the load on teachers, but give people experiences in neighboring communities that they might not otherwise find. We are inviting with the connection from Rhonda, thank you. Danielle from Grow NYC Zero Waste Schools is going to be joining our next meeting, which will be on Wednesday, the 20th. I have to check in. I'll bug her tomorrow again if it's at like 5:30 or 6 o'clock, because they are super swamped with the current rollout of the last round of brown bins going to all the rest of the schools. So there's a lot of trainings going on. But Daniil will join our next meeting and we'll talk about how we can support them, because at this point, I think they are also losing funding for FY25. So we will have more to discuss on that. So that's kind of where we've been going lately.
Thank you very much.
I will add, is Mary Ellen still on? I don't know if this is a good time to talk about the community board resolution thing or not, because
Oh,
that could
yeah.
be part of outreach.
Oh, yeah, Mary,
Although-
do you want to talk about the community? You want to talk about it?
I'll let Mary Ellen start.
Okay, sure. Thank you. As part of Save Our Compost, we had an outreach activity of members within Save Our Compost reaching out to their community boards and asking community boards to pass a resolution stating that they support the reinstatement of funding for community composting. And they could also put it in their community needs statement. This started with Community Board 1 in Manhattan. And they successfully passed a resolution. I have brought this up with Community Board 2. I've passed it on to the district manager, and Brandon Smith, who's the chair for the Health, Environment, and Social Services, is willing to put it up. Also, Lael Goodman and I from Save Our Compost reached out to Steve Chesler at Community Board 1, who's been very active investigating the Newtown Creek and the environmental impacts on the neighborhood. And he said that he would be interested in holding a hearing potentially on April 2nd. And they would like to hear from someone in the Brooklyn SWAB about the Brooklyn SWAB's opinion on community composting.
We do have much testimony.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Mary Ellen, because that we can also bring that up at the outreach committee meeting. Brandon's my neighbor, so I'll be interested to hear what he
Okay.
says for CB2. I can always walk to the end of the hall and see.
I know all he does is talk about like cannabis stores that are opening up in CB2, and I'm just like, do something different. So
Well,
anyway.
I'm sure he would love to. They're also, I don't even know what the name of the committee is that has sanitation in it. It's not the focus of the committee. So
Right. Yeah.
yeah, that's where they end up, liquor licenses and cannabis stores. So thank you, Kendall. I see the compilation of written testimony. So that's great. Oh, I see Uli's question. Do you have a tip sheet on how to get the other CBs to pass the resolution? I don't know if we have a tip sheet, but we have the actual resolution, right? That was passed, Mary Ellen. I'll let you talk.
Yes, definitely. And I started putting together a sheet so we can monitor some of the activity. And I could, if you like, Uli, I could put together a sample letter, because each community board would create a resolution that is customized to their own needs and nature of their community board. So I would love to talk more on that one, and yeah, and share the resolution with everyone, because certainly if someone's part of a Brooklyn community board and would be willing to do it, it would be much more powerful coming from a member of that community or that community board.
And actually, I would love to invite anyone that wants to reach out. Let's sort of have a list of people, because anyone that is in the balance, I can ask Mark and Bella. I don't know if Bella is still on. I saw her earlier. I can see if they've got time to reach out to the other community boards as well. So maybe Mary Ellen, I don't know if you want to keep a list or we both do. But I think that would.
Sure. Yeah. I might, I can use yours, or however you want to do it. I think I was going to create one for SOC that would be encompassing all the boroughs. But if we want to keep a separate Brooklyn one, and then we just link it in with the SOC activities, we can do that too.
I think let's do one for SOC, and then I can just look at it. We can work that out. And then Bella says she's on, she would love to help. So that'll be great, because I know she's already made calls to CBs. So Miriam?
Hi, everyone. You called me, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, everyone. I haven't seen you since the beginning of the year, so Happy New Year, everyone. Apologize about my voice. I was in nationals in Virginia Beach, so lots of screaming. Okay, I hear this, I hear this effort of doing a resolution with the community boards. And I'm wondering if we could join efforts and do also a resolution, pass resolution at the level of the community education councils. Since there is a lot of there is a lot of work now being done in the schools at the level of principals and the staff and everyone. So why not have also similar resolution passed at the level of the community, the CECs as we call them. So just
Should we talk about that with Danielle? That's a good
Yeah.
idea. We
Yeah.
can talk about that more at our outreach committee, because it's gonna be focused again on schools.
And
So-
if you wanna come, Lillian, you can come to that.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
You
Yes,
should have it on your email, and if you can put my email in, I'll tell you,
Yeah.
if anyone wants to join, and then we can move on, because I know we're taking time, but, if anyone wants to join the outreach meeting, on the 20th, I'll also send it out to the members and guest list.
Thank
But,
you.
Yeah. Yeah, and Beth is gonna put my email in, so email me if you don't already have my email. Okay.
So, while Beth is putting, I feel like we're in Wild Kingdom.
I know.
While Beth puts the email in. Jim's gonna subdue the rhino. Events committee. Liz, do you have anything, are you still on? Yeah.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
You can hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, okay. The events committee hasn't met, but Mary Ellen and I have exchanged emails about organizing a spring cleanup through, I forget the name of the organization, Mary Ellen.
It's Riverkeeper Alliance and their annual sweep on May 4th.
Thank you. Yeah, so that's something that's gonna come up. And then I'll be working on with Mary Ellen and anybody else who wants to be involved. So I'll schedule a meeting and then we'll have a update about that in April.
Thank you. Uli, are you working on something with Manhattan SWAB for another Brooklyn cleanup?
It would be another one of the plastic waste audits, and we don't have it scheduled yet, but it should be in April, and it's gonna be in Bushwick. It'll probably be April 13th if we can get that all worked out, but it'll be concurrently run with a partnership with Big Reuse, where we'll be doing some tree care, and then we'll have another team of people doing a plastic waste audit.
Nice. Great. Thank you. Okay. How about the NYCHA committee?
The NYCHA committee meets on Thursday. And so it hasn't met yet this month, but we got a little bit of news at this meeting that Domingo is working with them on these big grants. So that was still up in the air at the last meeting. And I'll report on the March meeting at our next meeting. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks. Do what? Oh, organics industry, sorry. Gosh, that's of all the things to forget.
I guess that's me.
Yes, Allison, thank you.
Well, we have our committee meeting on Monday. I did want to connect. I mean, we're still waiting to, legislation's pending. We already talked about Save Our Compost, but we were talking about tabling at the Trash Academy, doing like an all swab at the Trash Academy graduation, and also Crazy for Composting. So I really just wanted to kind of connect and see, see how we should be coordinating. I sent an email over the weekend. I don't know if you guys saw it. Just, you all, is anyone there having a discussion with the Trash Academy? Because they know we're gonna be there, but I'm just like,
Are they doing tabling like they have in the past? That's what I don't know. 'Cause this
Oh,
is a
that's-
different setup this year.
Did they reach out to you, Allison? Who did they reach out to is what I.
In the past, it's been me,
Right.
and then, because I've done it for a couple of years, and then I think I had transferred it, or at least CC'd, and then there was Oliver. Yeah, so, I mean, they have plenty of our emails, but I haven't heard anything from
But
Jenny.
they announced it at Trash Academy. that
Yeah, they
the
did.
Swabs would be there. So that was a surprise to me. So I'm glad you emailed Allison and put that on our radar.
I could reach out with
I
the Brooklyn
missed it.
SWAB
Yeah,
email,
reach
and then
out
they'll
to-
have that.
To Jenny.
Yeah,
If you-
Jenny,
Jenny
Jenny
Lynn.
Lynn.
okay.
Yeah, I'm sure her email's in there if you just when you start typing it.
Okay,
And I'm happy to help, where needed, cause I'll be there,
I'll CC you.
but I'll be
Oh,
graduating,
I
Oh, wow.
and so will Beth,
Nice.
and so
was
will
hope, I'm
Michael.
hoping to go as well, and
And
I just didn't know if we should, I look at it as a potential recruiting event.
Oh, yeah.
hope- And I just wondered, I think I emailed you guys, do we do like a little Google form with a QR code? I mean, just check out
can-
my and see
We
if you,
can talk about it, Allison, cause I set it up last year, but then I was doing my tabling for master composters, so.
okay, all right,
So,
let's
We,
talk
we have,
offline.
we have options, but maybe we should we could do a meeting about Crazy for Composting and,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
academy.
yeah, we can't wait
There's-
until the 20th, yeah, for that, because,
Yeah, but we have things, we have supplies, we got all that, we're good.
okay, all right, so we'll connect, and, come to the organics meeting, hopefully, Matt will be there, give an update on the meeting with Abreu tomorrow. Any updates, things, there's new news every week, so. Seems- I wish it was good news, but
Yeah,
one of these,
yeah.
that's it, yeah.
Okay, so I also forgot to mention that we need to start putting together a nominations committee or nominating committee. If you're interested, I guess email me or Brooklyn SWAB to start helping to field all the people who want to run for office.
Do you want me to give
And
background?
what?
Do you want me to give?
Yeah, Sherry's gonna give
So-
some background.
So the elections for officers happen once a year and they're in May.
Yeah,
And the bylaws say that 2 months before, which would be March, is when we need to establish a nominations committee of at least 3 people. Preferably, we have done in the past where they weren't anyone running for the office. And if I can say, I don't know what you all are doing, but chair, vice chair, and sergeant at arms have only been in 1 year. Right now, 1 year, and current people have only been in 1 year in office, but secretaries 2 years in a row, and that's the max. So Debbie at least is termed out from that role. She is eligible to run for something else. So for sure, secretary would be open. Everything's technically open. It's just, we don't know if there are incumbents or
Right,
not that
right.
you would be running
unopposed,
against.
yeah.
So, and the nominations committee, I am happy to help. I don't know that I will have the capacity to actually lead it this year. And Rhonda's led it in the past. I led it last year. It just involves working to gather people to run for office and then presenting them at the meeting in May. So that's my little summary.
Are there any political scandals we should be aware of?
Right.
I mean, there's a reason I'm not running. No, just
Yeah.
kidding. I'm kidding. Nothing from me.
I hope not. Not that I know of.
So if they're interested, anyone's interested.
They could email the Brooklyn SWAB.
have
or me.
Question,
Yes,
sorry. It's Mary.
Well, you're cutting out, Miriam, I think.
So question, in order to be, to participate, like, sorry, in order to participate as a secretary, do we need just to put our on top of that, of the elections?
You would be a member, any members can contact whoever becomes the nominating committee, and, take it from there.
That is a good point. You do need to be a member, and it is not too late to apply to be a member
It is
if
not.
you haven't yet
Yeah,
and you are interested.
yeah.
And is that like, is there an application where we can, that we can submit, or?
Yeah,
Who's-
we'll send that out. It's a link, it's online, we have some wonderful.
Oh, yeah, it
resources.
is on the website, on the probably about page on brooklynswab.org, but I haven't looked at it in a while.
Like 3 meetings.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're.
You know the most about this.
I know.
We
set
about it.
we set up.
I know about it now too, but please
I
talk
mean,
about it.
you're also welcome to talk. The requirements are also listed on the website, but the requirements to apply to become a member are attending 3 out of, I think, the last 6 months of meetings, right? And then being actively involved. When you become a member, then you need to be actively involved in one of the committees, and also attend at least 6 out of we usually do 11 meetings a year to be in good standing. But you can apply starting like the 3rd night. If this is your 3rd night out of the last 6 months, you can apply now. So, is that a summary?
Thank you, that's very informative, thank you.
Yes, thank you for asking the question.
Yeah.
And I see there are some people in here right now who have been to meetings for the last 3 months, or 3 months of meetings out of 6. So please apply and join us.
Yeah, we're fun.
And then you are eligible to vote on things like
Yeah. Whether we have our meeting.
testimonies.
Yeah, and whether
Yes.
we have our meeting on April 1st or April 8th.
There was also like at least 2 people whose terms are up in April, so look out for an email from me. That's you.
Oh, whose membership?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
and that's simple
there's
It's
a
very, yeah,
re-application.
there's just a reapplication. It's not
Yeah.
a big deal.
Oh,
they're being strict about,
Don't worry,
Having
I'm
to
keeping
reapply.
track of it. You won't lapse without
yeah,
knowing.
Is that every?
every 2 years.
2 years.
2 years.
Just keep reapplying. Okay, I love it. Okay, so we had some people asking, or we had someone ask about, just a refresher about the BK SWAB, listservs, and Beth, I've been talking so much.
I'll sort of get on
Maybe you wanna
screen.
do-
I've been
Yeah.
like off screen talking.
Yeah.
But I'll get on screen talking. I know we covered this last month. If you have the agenda handy in front of you, Rhonda did some nice screen captures about the email lists and just how to check what group you're enrolled in, because I know there's been some confusion, but basically there's 3 SWAB email lists. And the biggest one is the general public list, and that's where we mostly just post about upcoming general meetings, as well as like any sort of events that we really want to promote to a larger audience. That list has over 700 people on it, so if you are only on that list, you're not allowed to post within that list. Only a handful of people can actually post on that, but if you did have something huge you wanted to promote, you could let us know to see if it sort of falls within the parameters of posting to the wider audience. Then we have the Brooklyn SWAB members and guests list, and this is not only for members, but for folks who've been attending meetings semi-regularly. So if you're someone who has been attending meetings and you're not a member, I mentioned this last month, but if you want to be on that list and you're not on that list, please email the Brooklyn SWAB email address, which I could put also in the chat, but
It's also
it's on the agenda as well. swab.brooklyn@gmail.com. You can email that list and request to be added to the regular guests
And you may periodically get an email saying like, we invite you to join this list as well, but I will confess that I've been behind in catching up on that. So please be proactive. If you'd like to be added to that list, you are allowed to post. That's got maybe 75 people on it. And then we have a members only list, which is just for members and is only really used when we have votes that we need to do in between monthly meetings. And so we use that really only for voting. But the members and guest lists, I would say, is the most active list in terms of people posting and responding to each other. The thing that Rhonda added to the agenda is for you to check to see what groups you're in, because last month we had some folks requesting to be on lists who are already on the list. And you can actually easily do that by typing in groups.google.com, and you can check to see what all the Google groups that you are in, including the SWAB ones, and see also and modify how you receive emails, whether you get them each individual email or whether you get them like as a digest. I think you can request that kind of thing. But check first to see what you're in. And you can also see previous posts there too. So that's it about the lists, the email lists. If anyone has any questions, throw them out. Thank you, Michael, for putting that out. Michael, can you also just put the Brooklyn SWAB email in the chat since I can't multitask?
Yeah.
Thank you. And that's all.
Yeah, thank you. Does anybody have anything? This is kind of the announcements, open floor and discussion time. Does anybody have anything you'd like to bring up for discussion or just bring to people's attention?
Rhonda, I put in the chat that the Department of Sanitation is doing a hearing, a regulatory hearing on, I think it's now shifted to Monday, March 25th. Its focus is solely about the timetable for the first pilot zone in Queens that would start in September and end in January. And so there's an opportunity, because they're doing that as a rule, as a regulation. There's an opportunity for comment on those. Usually those hearings are pretty perfunctory, with very little testimony, but I suggested in the chat 3 items that the SWAB and others might take advantage of the opportunity to comment.
You can summarize if you want to while you're talking. That's
Yeah, well, up until now, it's a long, complicated story, but up until now, DSNY has been very, close-lipped about the whole commercial waste zone thing because they've been in the procurement process, which has lots of rules about, what they can say publicly or not. In fact, the franchise companies that they picked, the 18 of them were also operating under a gag rule not to talk to the media. But now through a rulemaking, it opens up a little bit. And the idea of a pilot ideally is to, test how the zone thing is going to work and all the different, rules and regulations and procedures and protocols are around it, including the limit of 3 companies and the like. So to me, it's an opportunity to now open up the oversight of the commercial waste zone implementation in the way that I outlined, which is, create a, 10 or 12 person oversight committee, have a clear protocol for what's going to be evaluated during the pilot and a clear methodology for it as well. Pretty simple, straightforward stuff. But it's sort of prying open a little bit the commercial waste zone implementation process for public oversight and support.
And that's a DSNY hearing, not a city.
It's a DSNY hearing.
Okay. All right. Okay, thanks. Thanks for sharing that.
So if the executive committee or the legislative committee could sort of pick that up, it's it's 3 weeks away, so there's still an opportunity to I don't think it needs to be more complicated than that at this stage, but I think those are the 3 things that I would encourage to be points to be made, requests to be made.
Okay. You can shape the chat at the end of this, right?
It automatically saves.
Yeah. Okay.
I didn't hear that. What was that?
I was just talking about saving the chat after because to get your
Okay.
points. Thank you. Does anybody else have anything?
I'll just say that was really helpful. Thanks, Kendall.
Yeah, thanks for that.
And if Lacey's still there, I can't quite tell. It'd be great to have the borough president say the same thing. I'm encouraging some other groups to make similar suggestions in that hearing.
Yeah, I haven't figured out if we're doing that one or not, but we have a lot going on in the background. Read commercial waste zones. That's all. But we're really hoping for a council hearing in April. That is what they have told us. And I think, and by they, I mean, Chair Brayu, that's what he's intending to do. And I think there's a lot of questions for sanitation about the decisions that were made that we are looking forward to getting them on the record about.
Interesting. I'll just add, not related to that at all. Because Pablo asked when I came in, and I thought it was good to announce that at the end of the month again, the Ecology Center is starting their pop-up e-waste collection events around the city. There was a little break due to the cold weather, and they're always outside. So lesecologycenter.org, I think they published pretty much the whole schedule on there. So they're all in several boroughs. I don't think quite in all boroughs, but yeah. So they're gonna start up again at the end of the month. Great. That's all.
That's nice. Okay. Anything else? It's like we're always running to catch up when we go so long with the speaker, but I forgot that we added.
We've had it.
30 minutes at the end for conversation. So it's nice to have that extra time.
Could I just draw,
Yes.
so just to draw attention to the other thing that Kendall posted in the chat about attending a construction and demolition waste conference, or deconstruction and building materials reuse, sorry. That is a fascinating topic because it's one of the biggest, but it's one of the biggest waste streams, but it gets some of the least attention. I think because it's like difficult to engage with in terms of people's everyday, but it is something that's really interesting. So I'd be happy to see anything that you're able to share from that, Kendall. And I'd like to also suggest at some point we have a guest speaker talk about it. I know it's not quite as accessible as like the food waste that you put in your trash can, but it's really important.
Well, I mean, isn't it how Justin started with big reuse?
Yeah.
Right.
And also Mary from Cures from SWAB has been pushing a lot with construction and demolition waste and by rail. Because there's a big problem with it.
So just to add to that, something that I feel like I've been screaming into the void about for a while that I would love especially when you're meeting with the commissioner, I think something that the SWAB could call attention to is with what's going on with outdoor dining, right? So the application I think is about to open for the new sort of outdoor dining regime that the city is implementing. But as part of that, the businesses are going to be expected to have a much different setup than some of them currently have, which is going to require them to take down, especially some of the sheds that are more substantial and, have doors and windows and all of that kind of stuff. Most of this material is recyclable, reusable, but I know because I have asked in multiple briefings and meetings with various players from the city that there's no real plan. I do think that they intend to create like a directory of resources for business owners to consult, and I imagine that they're gonna have like C&D Carters as part of that, but I didn't get the impression from the last conversation I had with the administration that they were really thinking about how to prioritize reuse and recycling. And I mean, I think it's gonna be really tough for these businesses in the first place. They're gonna be dealing with, different kind of haulers than they're using for their commercial waste, which is what they're used to.
Right.
I don't know, I just wish there was being more done there because I think it's gonna generate a ton of waste and I would like to see a more proactive plan and we're just not seeing it.
Well, let's definitely bring that up then.
Yeah.
We'll definitely bring that up.
I have a quick question. When you said the commissioner you were talking to, which commissioner? Is it the DSNY?
Yes.
Okay, DSNY. I can tell you, my husband is in the construction business and he's an architect. And there is no plan on the side of the building departments, for example, to do any reuse recycling. Every time we pass by a construction site and we see all the debris, everything being carted, and everything being mixed up, beautiful wood that could be reused, etc. So it would be fantastic if we could come up with a plan and serve it to these people because no one has the time or the focus to come up with a plan. But we've been talking about this with my husband for 20 years. It's a disaster. It's tons and tons of uh, things that go to the landfill, all mixed up, all mixed up. So it would be really great. I don't know where to start, but whoever is gonna do something, I'm willing to give a hand.
Thanks. That's good.
Yeah.
Let's figure out how to move forward with that.
I have heard some really good guest speakers about that.
You have? Okay.
I went to the first annual reuse state convention and a large focus was on building waste.
Okay. Okay, good. All right, excellent. Well, now it's 8:31. So we did it. We made it. But thanks to everybody for your great contributions and our wonderful conversation and we'll see you next month.
Hopefully on the 8th, but we'll
Yeah,
confirm that.
on the 8th, we'll confirm about the 8th.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.